My name is Kevin Evans. I'm Vice Chair of Newcastle County Police Accountability Board. Tonight I'll be your pilot in the absence of our chair who happens to have a prior. I call this May 21st meeting of the Newcastle County Police Accountability Board to order at 6:03 p.m. Before we get into the formal meeting, I'd like to provide everyone a synopsis of our charter directly from Section 1 of our bylaws. Board generally shall advise the Department of Public Safety and the Division of Police on policy, training, and other issues related to affecting the department and the community served by the department. Board shall also conduct community outreach, hold public forums, view complaints, as well as arrest data, and provide recommendations regarding police policies and future police reform. As a disclaimer, we cannot perform independent investigations of police or public safety incidents. We were not granted subpoena power as part of our charter. The first item on the agenda is a roll call. Signify attendance when I call your name. Chair Kim Oppenheimer. Vice Chair Kevin Evans present. Deshaun Nixon. Pamela Brooks Grimes, Bishop George Gibson, Norwood Coleman, Sean Green, Sean on the phone. This is Krista Davis, here. Doug Hamilton. Dr. Jenna D. And Dr. Tanya White. Yes, sorry. That's why for our non-voting members, Captain of Police Designee, Captain Brian Ball, and Public Safety Director Paul present. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. The minutes from the April 2024 meeting were distributed prior to the meeting. Are there any modifications to the minutes? Are there any modifications to the minutes? Hearing none, the minutes are adopted as presented. Next item on the agenda under old business is a presentation of FOIA guidelines. I turn the floor with Michael Ford, our in-house candidate. Michael, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. As everyone knows, my name is Mike Horton, and I'm going to give you a longer description of FOIA and how it applies to the board. So in this overview, we're going to...
Do you want me to pull it up?
Yes, please. Perfect. So we're going to go through an overview of the basic elements of FOIA for the board. And these are essentially the open meeting provisions. What is FOIA? What's a public body? What do you mean for a public meeting to be public? What publication agendas and meeting minutes mean? Public records exemptions and emails. So start off with the what is FOIA? It's what FOIA, policy declaration of FOIA. FOIA means Freedom of Information Act. It's the Delaware Code for Transparency of Public Records and Public Meetings. And under the Constitution, under the policy declaration for Delaware Code, it is vital in the democratic society that public business be performed in an open and public manner, so that our citizens shall have an opportunity to observe the performance of public officials and monitor the decisions that are made such officials in formulating and executing public policy. It is vital that citizens have easy access to public records in order for that society to remain free and democratic. Towards these ends and to further the accountability of government to citizens of the state, this chapter is adopted and shall be considered. Which leads us to what a public body means. A public body is any legislative or executive branch, agency, board, committee, subcommittee, or group that is established by the act of a General Assembly, or in this case, a county council, appointed by a state body or a public official, and otherwise empowered by a state entity. Further, that is also supported in whole or in part by public funds, expends or disburses grants or gifts, is impliedly or is typically charged by another public official body or agency to advise or make reports or recommendations. In this case, this board was created by the Newcastle County Council, with its members chosen by the county executive, with funds from taxes, and it is responsible for providing guidance and feedback to the Newcastle County Police Department. And so therefore, this body is a public meeting. Yes. Not all bodies are public in the state of Delaware. Any caucus in the House or Senate are not public meetings, public bodies, and universities outside the Board of Trustees, any of their meetings are not considered public. Public bodies can only have one member, and can have more than that, but as long as it has one appointed member, it's therefore a public body and therefore falls into this category. Meetings that are subject to FOIA are meetings that are either formal or informal gatherings of a forum of members of any public body for purposes of taking action on public business, either in person or by video conferencing. A quorum is a majority of a body, or unless it's otherwise stated, such as the bylaws. Some bylaws will have a smaller amount of quorum, but whatever that quorum hits, whatever that amount of people are in, that's when a public meeting starts. And with that, a series of telephone calls or emails can be considered a public meeting if it's done by the quorum of the public forum. If any kind of action is taken or if any kind of business discussed at that meeting, that makes it a public meeting. So a quorum can be achieved by a group of the members of this board happen to be meeting at like at Whole Foods or at a public park, and then having a discussion as to what the meeting is about. So it's a danger. It's always important to remember that whenever you are in a board meeting, you're within the board group, you can be considered a public meeting in that regard. An executive session is one of the few times where a public board may go into a non-public forum and they will discuss things that are not considered part of the public. These kind of things are strategy sessions, such as getting advice from board counsel, collective bargaining, or potential litigation. It could also mean personal matters, such as names and competency of individual employees of the state that are being discussed. The important thing to consider for a public meeting, for executive sessions in public meetings, is that a board has to terminate an executive session before calling for its appointment. Executive sessions may not be used without notice. So public session, so the executive session has to be noticed within the agenda prior to a meeting. Public meeting requirements are meeting notices, agendas, and minutes. Regular meetings and intent to hold executive sessions are listed in the agenda. The agenda has to be posted at least 6 hours in advance. And special rescheduled meetings have to be given at least 24 hours notice. Of course, emergencies can exempt from notice requirements, but emergencies are far in between and will be referenced as an emergency. The reason why these are important for FOIA is because this is the only way the public will have information as to when a meeting is going to take place. And because the board's responsibility is to provide the public with opportunity to come to the board meetings and to speak at board meetings on matters of public importance. Of course, publication must be conspicuous. You cannot just post to a county website. There has to be multiple ways in which information is pushed out to the public. And notice needs to have date and time. Has to be able to say if it's allowed video conferencing, and the agenda is determined at that time. If notice is published prior to the agenda being finished, the agenda must be uploaded or sent out prior to 6 hours before meeting. The agenda is vastly important because the agenda are the general statements that are coming to a public meeting. This allows the public to be able to have an opportunity to ask questions and bring their own feedback as to what the public meeting is about. This roadmap is essential to allow going forward to fulfill its promise to the county. As you heard at the beginning, those meeting minutes, they are prepared after a meeting, and they keep track of attendance records of the accounting of the vote. And these are important for transparency, as their accuracy allows for board to publish its information so that future boards and also future board members can look back and see how a board's progressed and what actions have taken place at a prior meeting. Documents of FOIA. Public records are records that are information received by a public entity that is of public interest and that have not been exempted due to other statutory or constraints. So just about every record given to the public, every record given to the government is a public record. And then from that, things are exempted from that tool. These could be statutory exemptions, which are personnel, medical, essentially things that would be an invasion of privacy or people being discussed. Generally, the board cannot redact things like timesheets, attendance records, salaries, except for very specific categories. But they can redact home addresses, telephone, and social security numbers. If the board happens to get some kind of trade secrets, which has happened in different boards, but I don't think it's a major category here. However, it's still important to be referenced. The important question is how the trade secrets were received. It wasn't voluntary. Does the board require this trade secret? Those are the questions that the board should be asking when receiving information with maybe trade secrets, and then be able to articulate those as to why those are not being released. Of course, things like investigation files for civil, criminal, law enforcement are considered exempt from FOIA. This is to protect the public, public safety, public order. These also include pending investigation files, types of files going on for current criminal or civil matters such as pretrial notices, discovery, things like that. Also intelligence files compiled for law enforcement purposes, which can endanger local or public safety. There is a numerous amounts of state and federal exemptions that I'm not going to bore everyone by going through every single one of those. So I'm just going to highlight ones to consider. These are federal agency records, such as military records, are exempt from FOIA, as they would constitute a violation of privacy. information locally from the public libraries for the same reason. Communications with General Assembly staff on behalf of the citizen, and also records related to the Delaware Law Enforcement Bill of Rights, the legal. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Along with the type of criminal and civil cases you're familiar with, other cases that would be exempt to FOIA are quasi judicial, so administrative boards. So things like disciplinary hearings or workers' compensation hearings or industrial accident hearings. Those are exempt from FOIA considerations. And then lastly, we have FOIA emails. I like to say emails here, but it's really any kind of board member communication about board information. When a member of the board speaks about public information in any kind of media, that can be subject to FOIA. And which matters here is what I call content, not medium. So as board members, we have a public responsibility to secure and relay any public information that you've received or you are expanding upon. However, you are still private citizens in other respects. You have the same right to privacy as anyone else. When a matter is not of public concern and where there's not a public meeting, you're not expected to keep records of your life. However, again, what matters is content, not medium. So if there is a chain of text messages, if there is emails from your secondary emails, which are discussing public records or public meetings, that information is subject to FOIA, and that should always be taken into consideration. I like to think of it as a best practice, as to metaphorically as a board member to put on an act when you're a board member. When you are a board member, the information you're providing, you're discussing, is public information. And you have to remember that while you are holding yourself out to be a board member. When you're no longer a board member, you've left the board, if you are driving home today, whatever happens when you're not in a meeting, you're taking off your hat, and therefore you don't talk about public information. You're not discussing public information. If during a time when you're not wearing a hat and you receive public information, you should remember that at that point your hat comes back on, and that becomes necessary to keep for posterity's sake. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, and I will be glad to provide guidance on the subject. Thank you very much for your time.
Are there any questions, Mike?
It's the bylaw, that's available, your bylaw.
Sorry.
Yes.
Technically, questions from the public are reserved for the public comment portion. So you'll have an opportunity to ask a question at the end of the meeting. I'm so sorry. We should have said that.
Should have said.
Mhm.
That's the chair.
Yeah.
So if you didn't hear that, just to say a couple of things. One, housekeeping, please make sure you post, et cetera. And two, if you have a question, there's a section on our agenda called public comment. Please hold those questions until then, and we'll address those questions at that time. Thank you very much. Thanks, Michael, for the presentation. We now move to the next item on the agenda, the old business review proposed bylaw change. But then I turn the floor over to myself, Vice Chair Kevin Henderson, for that review. As a board, we were tasked with taking a look at the new established bylaws for potential changes that would provide more clarity in our response. After an initial review, the following items have been identified for modification. Based on our current bylaws, these items must be read in 2 consecutive meetings prior to adoption. This is the first of those readings. Again, we're not going to go through the bylaws in detail. These are just the sections again that were identified potential modification based on gaps that we saw with the initial set of bylaws. First item is Article 3, composition, Section 6, committees. No language existed on what committees that we should have. And so we created this language. And again, the handout you guys have is a little different than what I say, but in the final version it will be next week because we got the board may create committees as needed. There shall be 4 standing committees: executive, bylaws, research, and community outreach. The president appoints all committee chairs. Committee chairs must be voting members of the board. The executive committee shall consist of officers, chair, and vice chair, and non-voting members of the committee as established under Newcastle County Code 205200. The executive committee shall exercise all powers of the board between bylaws committee shall consider advisable of bylaw amendments, hear all reviews and proposed amendments, and make recommendations to the board of directors of amendments to the bylaws. The research committee, the board chair shall appoint voting members to lead this committee. This committee's primary responsibility is to perform research necessary to meet the required reporting of the board. The committee shall consist of voting members only, with members rotating on and off the committee based on research and knowledge. Finally, the community outreach committee, the board chair shall appoint a voting member to lead this committee. The committee's primary responsibility is to create points of interaction between the board and the local community to facilitate better community involvement and transparency of purpose. And then finally, ad hoc committees. The chair can create committees as needed. Again, the rationale behind putting this bylaw amendment there, again, is to clearly call out the committees again, that would be both standing committees and what their responsibilities are. I'll stop there and ask for any questions.
In the very first section, the Senate for executive points, is that referring to the chair lady?
The chair. And I'll correct that.
Thank you. And then the question I had is why use exclusion of non-voting members from, particularly in the regional committee?
These are only 2 non-voting members, and most of the time they're the ones that are bringing the items to us to be researched, and so we don't want to participate. If you're confident, I think that actually participate in some of the items again that they'd be asking us to.
From a non-voting. Okay, all right, thank you.
Any further questions? The next item, again, we'll try to get through these as quickly as possible. Article 3 composition, section 7 conflict of interest. There was no language that existed. No board member of the Newcastle County Police Accountability Board shall derive any personal profit or gain directly or indirectly by reason of his or her participation on the board. Other than compensation, no member shall derive any personal profit, gain directly or indirectly by reason of his or her position on the board, except through activities that may facilitate professional advancement or contribute to professions such as publications, professional services, and have been fully disclosed to the board. Each individual shall disclose to the board any personal interest which he or she may have in any matter pending before the board, and shall refrain from participation in any decision on such matter. This recusal and rationale shall be recorded in the report for full public transparency. Again, this is the conflict of interest statement, again, that clearly states that on certain items where we have personal interest, we should recuse ourselves and state what that recusal is. And again, we can't make any additional monies off of any activities just because we are on the board and solicit favors. The next item, Article 5, meeting, Section 5, order of business. The current language reads, the chairman shall call the meeting order. The chairperson shall also advise any time limitations applicable to end the meeting. And in the course of Section 6 of this article, this is the order of business: roll call, minutes, old business, new business, report to staff, reports of committees, comments by the public, and then finally adjournment. Again, the revised section would simply be the same thing with the adding of approval of the agenda. What that will allow us to do again is to take input from the public or from members of the board who want to modify the agenda after it's been sent out as part of the board meeting itself. Any questions about that? The next item, Article 5, meeting, Section 7, no language exists, parliamentary authority. The rules contain the Robert's Rules of Order, latest revision, revised editions of govern the parliamentary procedure of the meetings in all cases in which they are not inconsistent with the bylaws and statutes applicable to this board. Again, this is simply establishing Robert's Rules of Order as our parliamentary authority. Any questions about that? And then finally, Articles, I guess 9 amendments, section notice of proposed amendments by the existing language, let's say notice of proposed amendments by the bylaws shall be given to each member of the board at least 2 weeks prior to the business meeting at which the proposed amendment is to be introduced. The proposed amendment shall be read at 2 regularly scheduled business meetings. The bylaws may be amended at the motion of a quorum of the board following the second meeting. The modification again is it's the same language, but putting a 2/3 majority of voting membership is required to revise amendments. Anytime you're modifying your bylaws, you want more than a simple quorum or a simple majority of your individuals modifying the bylaws, since they are the rules and regulations of the organizations. You want a 2/3 vote of that, and this is what this establishes, 2/3 vote necessary for the amendment bylaw. So that concludes the initial reading of the proposed bylaws. Again, if you have any questions from a board standpoint, any suggestion modifications, reach out to me. We'll get those updated and distributed to all board members before the next meeting. The next meeting, we'll read through these quickly again, and then we'll vote on their adoption, individual adoption. Okay. So again, as I said, this is the first of your proposed bylaw modification, and questions or comments should direct it to me. Future consideration. If there are any further questions, I return to go back to myself to chair. The final item of the oath is the review of moving vehicle policy by Captain Faulkner and Director Bond. Gentlemen, you have it.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Who I don't know.
Yeah.
Brian Parker, Captain. And just very quickly, a very brief thumbnail of our use of force policy as it pertains to shooting a vehicle. Everybody can hear me correct? I told that loud. You can't discuss it. Again, the use of force training that we as an agency put on to new recruits or even those in our citizens police academy, which we have graduated from this tonight, is usually an hour and a half to 2 hours. So we don't have time to get into that. At least wanted to give those folks who are visiting or joining us for the first time and may have not had a chance to see our policy previously, kind of a quick overview of how we got to it. If you're unaware, all of our, well, not all, most of our policies are on our website. This policy or use of force policy in particular is public consumption. The purpose of our policies is to establish a guideline for use of force by members of the division. Corrective and standing operating procedures are living and breathing documents. They're reviewed and updated in accordance with CLIA standards, Delaware state and federal laws. And that happens on a yearly basis. So researching for this today, I spoke with our accreditation team. And this policy particularly has been updated 10 different times over the last, so every year it's gotten some sort of update. Our officers or your officers are to receive updates every year, specifically on use of force. This is a mandatory training. Every time you go to the range once a year, you will receive all your use of force updates, and then you're retrained on the policy. We are granted the authority as police officers in the state of Delaware to use force and potentially deadly force under Delaware law, Title 11, Section 467. From that, in addition to Title 11, officers are supposed to, or trained to, have an understanding of legislation and Supreme Court precedents. And they're expected to act in accordance with those laws and use of force situations. The threshold for which force is evaluated is objectively reasonable. The Supreme Court holds it objectively reasonable is based on the totality of the circumstances, judged from the perspective of a reasonable officer on the scene, rather than with the 20/20 vision of hindsight. That's important to note. Officers are not required to choose the least intrusive level of force, only a reasonable. So for the last, well, 2001, 2022, that I could gather in my research, our policy, our use of force policy, one directive that covered role and authority of police officers or agents. Since changes become its own directive because of the importance of it. It had a statement that said officers are prohibited from discharging their firearms in the following instances. Enumerated a couple different things. Number 4, without a motor vehicle and or the occupants therein, unless as a last resort and only when the operator of the vehicle directing the vehicle with deadly force against the officer or other innocent persons, and the officer believes employing deadly force creates no substantial risk of injury to the innocent person. That was until 2022, at which point policy was changed. It's, sorry, section 3, letter G says officers should not discharge their firearms at or from a moving vehicle, motorcycle, or bicycle, unless the officer reasonably believes such action is necessary to protect the officer or an innocent person from the use or imminent use of deadly force against the officer or innocent person. So I spoke to the couple of the folks that are actually involved in recreating that modification 2 years ago today. It was based off of state law, Supreme Court guidance, best practices from FLETC, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Training Commission, IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, and PERC, the Police Executive Research Forum. And then our accreditation unit reaches out to similar size and type agencies throughout the country, share their policies. That's kind of brought it from what it was previously. So, again, if the board has any questions as to how we are, where we are now, happy to field them in class. That's okay. So my intent is, my next presentation is to have the first folks talk about what this training is, and give you a much more in-depth training on our totality. Here's, of course, it's not just putting your hands on people. Sometimes it's your presence, officer, you give a call, commands, de-escalate. Actually, put your hand.
Any questions?
Any questions on the board?
Yes, ma'am.
The yearly training, does it tie in with the 2016 adoption of being trauma-informed, cultural competency, knowing who you are serving in communities and such? Does that in any way tie in with any of this yearly training?
I have to get back to you on it specifically if that yearly training does. I don't think it does, but I do think that is tied into our greater training. Yes, training. Service training. It'd be in a roll call setting or through our Axon virtual reality stuff to get, like, to get you guys along to see where we do have modules that speak to those specific things.
That would be great because I think that Governor Markell adopted that in 2016. And I think there was a study that in the city of Wilmington in particular, that there was a decrease in circumstances such as racial profiling and things of that nature. So I just would be curious to see what they have on that.
That's the follow-up.
As you said, we did almost annually with the in-service trainings. We do it 3 in-service trainings, 2 ranges, and then you have the classroom portion of the in-service training. And that was one of the things that we hit on a few years ago, was the cultural and training that we did. I think Sergeant Sonia Trudeau was teaching that. He also touched on it, and this is bias training that went through, and I think we actually did that for a couple of years in a row. But because there is so much content out there, training materials and things that we have to get trained on, some things you would like to go back to and touch on them every year. But because there's such a large volume of information that you're trying to get out, you have to pick and choose what are going to be the issues or the topics that you want to train on, that particular year. And oftentimes it's born out of incidents that happen, not only within Newcastle County, but incidents that happen outside of Newcastle County, outside of the state of Delaware. You know, if we see something there, you know, that occurred in California, and we said, you know what, we need to get ahead of this. We haven't had it here, but let's get ahead of this. So that might bump up in terms of doing the in-service training. Now, and there's also, we don't wait just until those few times a year to do training. We have roll call. Those are, although they're very brief, we might get, 20, 25 minutes because the officers are in roll call and we need to get them out on the street. But if it's something that urgent, we'll put together something. And if we have to, we'll come back and have a part two to that roll call training.
Further questions from the board?
It was mentioned that the policies that are available to the public are available online, but that some are not available to the public. I'm curious how board members will know about the non-public ones.
Yeah, I think we'll have to be like, part of the reason some of the policies, some of those policies speak to trade craft, tactics.
Tradecraft.
Tradecraft.
Captain, do you mind speaking into the mic? We're having some trouble hearing you. Or speak up a little.
Yeah, so some of those policies that are not forward facing, consider, I don't use the word trade craft, but they're police specific where they get into tactics on how things are done, whether it's undercover things that if they were made public, could potentially put either victims, or officers at risk. I'm about to speak with Mike. I don't know if there's potential to go to an executive session, for example, to share that with or not.
And I'm thinking more holistically, like as we move forward, I'm sure that there will be times where we need to ask about this, but if we don't know what there is asked about, we don't know. And so I'm wondering, even without going into the sharing of policies,
Right, maybe
is there a directory, a table?
Yeah, we could, I think that's a big happen for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, gotcha for that. Yeah. Thank you very much. Any additional questions?
Will this presentation be available on the
Yes, ma'am.
website?
I apologize, it's just on my jump drive, I will email the paper right in.
He's asking about the public. The public.
Yeah, sure. It is,
Part of the record of the meeting.
yeah, it's part of the record, it's part of the minutes, and this policy, like they said, it is available online under the use of force policy. But if you all want us to put it somewhere else, just let me know. Like, were you thinking on the website?
Yes,
Or-
because I was asked in between meetings about attachments and such meeting materials, if that is available to the public, not just us. Just
That's
for
a
the
great
purpose of
point.
Just information.
Yeah, other boards have done that. I'm new, so I'm still learning, but I will figure out how they do that and see if we can do that as well. That's a great point.
Any additional questions?
Okay,
I
please.
apologize. The sharing of this policy, but this in particular, I know was highlighted. Are you highlighting it so that we know that it was changed or something that we're supposed to consider?
Well,
I'd like to make a motion. I move that an ad hoc research committee be created immediately to start the process of gathering information on open meeting policies for other jurisdictions.
the motion is made and seconded that we form an ad hoc research committee to gather information on moving vehicle policies from other jurisdictions. Are we ready for debate? Hearing none, hearing no debate, are we ready for the question? The question is on the motion to establish an ad hoc research committee to gather information on moving vehicle policies from other jurisdictions. All in favor signify by saying aye. Voting members.
Aye.
Voting members only.
This is Sean. It's Sean.
So you-
It scared me. We got you,
All
Sean.
opposed?
I'm here, yeah.
Ayes have it, the motion carries. Again, that we established an ad hoc committee to study vehicle policies for other jurisdictions. Just for public consumption, because our bylaws didn't state what the committees were, and that was part of what we went through by establishing those committees. Those bylaws don't go into effect until probably our next meeting. So in the interim, we had to establish an ad hoc committee to help facilitate getting the research done on this policy immediately. So what I'll ask is if you're interested in participating from the board on that committee, initially, please reach out to me after the meeting. I'll work with Madam Chair to help want to assign a chairman for the committee itself. And if you're interested in participating as an individual member, we'll get some communications out to you for offline meetings we can have in preparation to bringing something back again for our June meeting. So thank you. Moving on, the next item on the agenda under the first, under new business is a presentation by Captain Faulkner or Director Bond on the Citizens Police Training Academy. Gentlemen, you have the floor.
Everybody's okay, I'll just do it from here. You can hear me in the back. Awkward, I apologize. I did not put together a PowerPoint for this, but I did hand out a document to the board that we will make sure is shared. Look at that. So in 2015, the Newcastle County Division of Police started a Citizens Police Academy. Approximately 250 of your fellow citizens have gone through the program since its inception. Again, thank you for being here, one of our graduates. Just so everybody's aware, it's not a traditional police academy. Not a Monday through Friday, it's not push-ups, it's not running and jumping. But it was actually born out of our roots as a community policing agency and to fulfill our mission. And if you're not aware of what our mission is, the members of Newcastle County Police are dedicated to making our communities safer through professional delivery of police services while actively engaging in innovative problem solving and cooperative partnerships. And many years ago, and I oversaw the last Citizens Police Academy, or CPA as we call it, that still holds true. It's a fantastic opportunity for us to show folks how and why we do things, and then the community to ask questions, and then sometimes provide insights to how maybe we can do things better. Much in tune with what we're here to do on the board. So the Citizens Police Academy is an 8-week program, 3 hours a night for about 24 hours. It's a predominantly classroom type setting, takes you towards the building. But you learn about ethics and accountability, accreditation, our professional standards unit, which is a unit that investigates complaints made against police officers. Hiring process, you see the technology and virtual reality training from our Axon unit. Use of force unit comes in and does some training, again, much more robust than I gave you. Behavioral health unit, community services, search and seizure, and on so on. So a lot of the key points. So again, it's completely at the board's discretion as to how the board feels the need to accomplish the training requirements. But what I provided you is kind of a honestly, very similar curriculum that we run for the CPA with a few changes and some expansions on some things that we think would be important work that we're all going to do together. And again, it's completely up to the chair, the vice chair, and the members. We can, in my research and reading other agencies that have gone through with boards, Anne Arundel comes to mind. They did it during their normal meetings, the first 5 or 6 meetings, to get all the requirements out of the way. Again, that's one way. If the board decides that, hey, every 2 Saturdays, we can all get together for 5, 6, whatever hours it is, we will make that work. Again, it's completely up to you. That's an option there. And the other thing I have that I will make sure to get emailed out to the board is I know many of you have inquired about ride-alongs. Highly encourage that. Obviously, you get a chance to go out to the office and interact with the public. And it's simply just a matter of filling out a form and signing. And then we'll get you scheduled. Again, the only thing there that I'm sure the director would agree on is if you're able and willing and desire to do such, try to do more than one. Everybody always says, oh, it's a Friday night, it's going to be crazy. Well, Friday night, you need to be playing basketball with kids and, walking through a neighborhood. And on Tuesday night, the bottom will fall out. There's all sorts of stuff. So just encourage you to try to do that. If you have any questions about anything we can provide training on, I'm happy to have this.
Any additional questions about the police police training academy? Again, I think as an executive committee, we have some conversations about potential ways of how we can execute against this. We'll meet with the body and hopefully get some information out to the body for their consensus to do more or something.
Yeah.
Something else.
Sure.
And again, hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have at least an initial plan of action, like engage with you guys specific to, next item on the agenda under new businesses, selection of dates and location for the public forum. The floor is now open to all members for recommendations. Recommendations from, put on, the whole next, first public forum.
When I spoke with, Madam, Chairwoman Eppenheimer, she recommended that we, hold the forums every other month, starting in June. So next month would be the first public forum, take a break in July, then have another public forum in August, take a break, then, the following month. But it's up to you all. Just want to throw that out there since she's not here.
Again, I'm okay with that. So what you're saying is next month, we have public forum?
Yes, but I don't think I can make a motion. Okay.
Okay.
Make a motion that we close and move forward with every other month,
Yes.
starting in June.
Motion is made the second that we, motion is made the second, sorry. Second. Motion is made the second that we have public forums alternate months starting in June. Are we ready for debate? Hearing none, we're ready for the question. The question is on whether or not we should have public forums every other month starting in June. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed? The ayes have, the motion carries. We'll have public forums every other month starting in June.
Sean, you heard that? Sean?
Yes, for having it every other month.
Thanks, Sean.
Again, the details of that public meeting we'll work through in our executive meeting or locations.
Yeah, that's what Mike, we can have those discussions, in executive committee about the structure of the forum, correct?
Executive session, as long as it's noticed in the agenda.
No, executive count, like our executive meeting, the executive meeting, we had prior, so.
Okay, yeah.
We can have that conversation, get it out to the board prior to that and have methods available, get buy-in, the approach and how to do this.
Yeah, and I did reserve the scriptorium in this library if we want to have it here next month on the date of the meeting. We do have that option. Now, y'all are welcome to pick another location, but I just went ahead and reserved this space for June and July.
So I got a question. I understand we gotta do like policy, procedures, all of this stuff, right? But I think it's important that we have involved in this conversation. Waiting to the end of this whole thing right here is a deterrent. Because a lot of people come.
Sorry, waiting for the end of what? I'm sorry, the meeting
Of
or
the
the,
meeting.
okay, sorry, okay.
Because, we're talking about people's lives here.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about how to change the situation with what's going on with the police and resources, stuff like that. So I feel, well, I don't feel, I believe that during these meetings, very important that after the initial introductions and the things like that, that we could somehow engage with the community. Reason being is because they're sitting, they're listening, they don't believe, I can't speak for everybody, so y'all forgive me. Everybody can't understand the policies. Everybody don't understand the procedures. Everybody don't understand the technical language that's being used. Half of this stuff I don't understand. I'm just sitting here like going along with the program, only until it's time to make a difference. Because when it's time to speak up and make this change, that's what I want to do. I only can't, I got with this committee because I need to make a difference. I need to make an impact. I need to hear language that's working for the people. I need to hear that. I hear it.
And I was mentioning, we have to lay the road foundation first before we can.
But, so Doug, I hear you. I hear exactly what you're saying. And we have to follow a certain meeting structure based on the county law. And so the county law says that the public can be involved in the meeting, but only during the public comment section. Now, the public forums that the board is welcome to hold, you have to hold it for at least during the year, but you're welcome to hold more than that. Those are the places where we can engage with the community. It's not a public comment, it's not a seated meeting, things like that. Like if you want to ask a question, you all can engage.
I was asking.
Okay.
To the committee, like, if that was possible, and it's pretty much.
I think it
Yeah,
is
good.
possible, but during the public forums.
Yes, please.
I would like to, second what I believe you're trying to communicate, one that we need to be more accessible. I am learning law of schools myself, and so whenever you phrased, are we ready to hear debate on the matter? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready to debate this. I didn't realize that was my time to say I have a problem with it. So I think even just going to every other month already is premature, and I recognize that I missed the boat as far as how Robert's rules, and that's a procedural error on my part. But as far as and please, I don't want to speak for you, so if I'm interpreting this wrong, please say so. But I think that part of accountability and democracy, as the thing said during the presentation earlier, is that we need to have understanding, right? And so if we could slow things down a little bit, educate us and the public about the procedure, because we are not parliamentary experts at all. But if I may make a motion, and if I'm doing this right, I think that we should make it where public comments for items that are on the agenda can be heard after each item on the agenda and before votes are made, instead of holding all public comments in it.
That's a question for the.
I'm okay.
That's allowable.
And so going forward, I think the statement is that if there are questions that come out either during the presentation by non-voting members or by voting members, that the public would be allowed to comment in the interim and not have to wait until the public comment period.
Yes.
That's what we said.
Yes.
We're okay.
So you would have to change. the-
No. We still have a public
Yeah,
comment
still have
section.
that,
But what we'll have to do is state
but
we have to state that again during, as a part of the rules of the road that we given at the beginning of the meeting. It can be stated that if the public has a comment on a specific question that's being covered by the board, please feel free to raise your hand and be acknowledged. So again, your question can be heard during that discussion. All right? That's it. I see, brother. Come on.
No, I was just thinking on the every other month. I think right now we have too many fires to put out to do it every other month. I think if we get to the place where we can be more, know more about what's going on around this area and we're addressing them, I think missing a month could be very.
So we meet monthly. Public forum is a special type of meeting we did that will occur where the public again is actively involved. So the public forum will be a different type of meeting than this, right? We won't have a formal agenda.
No.
We won't go through any of the bylaws or any of that stuff. It's really a public forum where you as the public get to come in, ask questions of the board, of our non-voting members, of whomever you want us to invite. Again, so that again, you can get your questions answered. So that's two different types of meeting, right? So this is our formal kind of meeting where we're handling the business of the organization. And then there'll be a public forum again where everyone, the public can come, be involved, be invited, and ask questions directly to me or anyone on the board or any again of our policymakers that'll be at the time.
Yeah, and I think this conversation is really, really helpful. And, we can continue this conversation at a public forum. Since the board is so new, we need you all to tell them what to prioritize. What are those fires that, we need to put out that's overwhelming the community? Like, what do you want to see change? What should we prioritize?
We got back here person and we'll come to you.
Oh, this is just a suggestion. Understand that the procedural things that must be taken care of, truly get all of that. But is there a way for y'all to have an executive meeting first to handle those things? And then when you have the meeting, it'll speed the process and give more time for public comment.
Well, part of what we're trying to do is transparency, right? Not have things like. behind the
Yeah,
scenes.
yeah.
No.
And
What
then
I'm saying
and
is,
then come to the public and go, hey, here's what we've
no,
decided. Right?
I'm saying certain things that's being discussed, right? But
So
then-
like things like
These-
our bylaws.
They have to be public.
Yeah, those won't be popular conversations on the agenda on an ongoing basis, right? You might hear bylaws once every 2 years. So you don't have to worry about something like that. Presentations that they make, I think, are essential again for public.
Yeah, well, I agree with that. I'm just saying
policy.
some of the other stuff.
The kind of stuff that I was doing again, specific to bylaws, you might not hear that again for another year and a half, 2 years, right? So don't think that that's a part of our standard meeting going forward. We just got bylaws that were passed last session, and they were very new, and we were asked to take a look at them, so to make them again work better for us as an organization. You won't hear that conversation again in the future, again, unless someone comes back to the board and says, our bylaws need to be modified. So again, the type of conversation that you hear will be more like the presentation made by the gentleman here versus again, the kind of intimate details of how the board will work on a case-by-case basis, which should help facilitate making the meetings move quicker. Okay. Question?
You just said for the public, it's 4 times a year, the public?
Up to at least 4 times a year, but we can go more than.
All right. We have a
Right
question.
now, with every other month, that's 6 times. Right? So
We
we've
have,
already exceeded our expectation.
we have a question from Sean Green. He's a member of the board. He is on Microsoft Teams. Can I give him permission to unmute?
Yes, please.
Sean, you have the floor. I see
Yes,
Sean.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we hear you just fine.
I just want to make sure and hope the board can agree on regarding the public forums that the public is made aware, like as far as effectively, like a flyer advertising it to make sure it's getting out there. Because from my experience, I've always end up finding out different type of public meetings, but a lot of the community are not aware of. So I just want to make sure we put it out there when the forums are the dates.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Board members are shaking their heads. Yep. Yep, everyone's in agreement with you, Sean. Thanks.
Question?
So is this meeting tonight a public meeting or is this a board meeting where we just hearing a bunch of gibberish?
No, this is both, right? This is a board meeting again where we're handling the business of the board. There's a public comment section again that's available for you to make comments after again we finish the business of the board. So it's not just gibberish. There are certain things again that from a law perspective that we have to handle as a board of directors in order to comply with the ordinances that were passed by the county. The part that you just heard is that piece of it. Handling that piece of that business. Now we can get to, again, the rest of the agenda, again, with the public forum that we're about to get to. That's about open that will allow you to ask and answer any questions you may have.
Just share comments.
Can I just clarify a question? Okay, so the public forum is an opportunity bi-monthly for public members to come in and ask questions. Are they also sharing experiences during the public forum? All right, so that's one opportunity. We're saying that for right now, we're going to do that 6 times a year. A second opportunity would be during our board meetings, as they're here now, they can make public comments at the end of our, basically, our business. So that's another opportunity. So really, in some cases, it's not just 6, it's the 12 plus the 6 opportunities throughout the year. And then we just approved someone, I'm sorry, I don't know the paper, this community outreach. We actively working.
And Sean was, kind of volunteer. He's been volunteer.
portion, you will have review, because that really none of it's gonna be in all of them.
If it looks like. For right now, we can talk about it in executive session, because we got some feedback from, the from the COA, which is a national organization that monitors the police accountability boards across the country about feedback. And what we'd like to do is have a conversation with the board about that conversation first, before we have that conversation. Because then we got some very interesting feedback on feedback versus complaint, et cetera, how to handle it specifically. That's something we'll take off, we'll table for tonight. Again, we'll bring back, talk about, and we can have positions clarity around, what we're going to propose to feedback.
For them, we worry about. We go back to Captain Walker's presentation to posing about the training, and our participation and such. I think that kind of got tabled because of discussion, which respectfully, whether we as board members can participate in the training and stuff.
We're required to participate, and what I think I said was that we take it off, we'll table it for now, so that as the executive committee, we could have a conversation about how to structure the training and get back to them again after the 4 or 5 sessions. So again, the final item on the agenda is public. Please raise your hand and wait to get acknowledged by the chair before speaking. If you're online, please use the raise your hand icon to get our attention. And please restrict the comments to 2 minutes. Yes, sir. Fucking person.
2 questions. My first question is, how is the board prepared to track complaints or feedback given points?
Again, so the answer to that is, the thing that I tabled was a feedback. We cannot take a point. Right? So, because we can't investigate. If you give us a complaint, we don't have subpoena power, meaning we can't call members of the police department in front of us to perform an investigation. Kind of stated that up front. So our powers are limited to the fact to just doing research and taking in feedback from the public, and then seeing if that feedback should translate to changes in public policy by making recommendations to the department.
What is the process going to be to track feedback?
We're going to create a form and then create a mechanism for tracking that feedback and reporting that feedback out to the public in a very transparent way. We just not have developed that process yet.
So if you give feedback to them, right, at your next board meeting, how do you remember what it says?
Because we didn't have it.
So the minutes.
The minutes for tracking feedback until again we come up with a formal mechanism, a database, like, for lack of a better word, where we can get written feedback, register that feedback, and then track that feedback.
So my second question is probably going to need clarification on the issues. I'm very familiar with processes. I understand the board would not be able to process it. But if nobody said it yet, and I will hope the board already understands that oftentimes the police department don't get as many complaints that go down because people aren't comfortable.
Right.
And one of the primary uses of advisory boards, review boards, or whatever the technical term this board is used, is to be vehicle to ensure those complaints get there. So while you cannot process complaints, I would ask the board to consider one. My question is going to be: is there contact information to reach out outside of the board meeting? But if when it's feedback, there's no need to reach out. But 2, consider to receive community complaints.
and have a way to be able to assist them to formally putting it in there. But they just say, oh, we don't take complaints and shut down. I mean, in my opinion, would be building a wedge in the community. We've already started.
I think we agree with you, and one of the conversations that we had in our last executive meeting was a way again to work with the police department, coming with a memorandum of understanding. Again, that when we do get complaints, because we know we inevitably will get them, regardless of whatever walls we put up, we will inevitably get them, and how we filter those, again, complaints back to the appropriate parties on that side of the fence. So we have to come up with what we call a memorandum of understanding, a way that we work together as a board with public policy and with the police department, that if in fact we do get complaints, and I'm quite sure we will, we get them to the appropriate place and at the appropriate time to the appropriate person.
And that's just, let's not throw any words. When you talking, you like, we can try, like, let's complain. Get a complaint, it's nothing to call right now.
No, I'm saying, we just need to come up with a formal process.
Just
That's all.
a suggestion, and these are just suggestions from a community member that's concerned.
Thank,
And it's not,
I want to keep us on time here. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes. And so if you can please ask your question and allow the board to answer. And we'll try to keep those discussions, a little bit above 2 minutes, so that way you have 2 minutes to say your piece and, give the board a little bit of time to respond.
You're fine, sir. A question, you,
May I just say a statement for the record? So I think it's a good point, and you're absolutely right. We need to create procedure. I think we should consider path to getting complaints to them, but also some may not be appropriate to them. So we need to consider if there are other paths.
and again, that would be part of, to your point, I think we dealt with one recently where the complaint had already been registered with them, and we had to give the individual alternative methods for pursuing complaints, right? Because the complaint itself had already been reviewed by Newcastle County. The person didn't like the response and forwarded it to us, so we had to provide them alternatives. Again, by not saying, hey, go back to them and reply. So that will also be a part of our. Sir, oh, no, there was one here.
yeah.
And then I'll come back.
Okay. No, I would just like to suggest, I was on the big task force. We can have these accountability, right? And I'm glad the county stepped up. The person who's moving the state. Truly appreciate that and understand everybody's resumes up there. But do you think that the community should have basically an oversight committee just to see, watch what you're doing? Not to say that you're not going to do your job, but it's going to make it easier for the community to accept what you're doing. Because if you're doing something like Jonathan said, they may not understand certain language or certain policies and procedures. That committee can now disseminate the information to explain it in layman terms. Because a lot of times, you focus up here, you speak up here, but the people that's being affected, they don't have that view, they don't have that understanding. So if you don't have something to bridge that gap, where you can speak to them in a language they understand, when we have this kind of meeting, those forms are going to turn into complaints, not what you guys accomplish. So I can be doing something like that.
Again, I was the person who returned it on. Because you're talking about something that exists outside of the regulations that it created us, right?
Exactly.
It would require someone to go back to that regulatory board, the regulatory body to modify, to create an oversight board for.
Yes.
Yeah. So it would take the public to go back to politicians and say, hey, we need someone to oversight for these guys, and have that proposed and passed through state law and order.
It would have to be a county.
Yeah,
Right. Saying that you want to
An accountability board for the police accountants. But yeah, understand. Here, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm sorry. My bad. Don't take it personally.
How old you got to be to do life? We must ask this because we trying to reach the youth. where we have to grab people. So how old would you have to be a driver? Because if we can get the youth interested, we can reach out to them and bring them in. We can in the whole lot. But when we was coming up, police was inside. It was live through sign, so we knew that we don't have. We don't have that kind of thing. I could call Franco because I knew Franco. I mean, so I could say something to him when he was riding by. He was shot. We don't have that same communication between the police. 158. So we don't have that same communication. It's been broken down. So if we're doing this violence, we're trying to reach who we need, which is the youth, before you have to wrap up. How old or how young can we start this violence? I mean, because I know it's some legal stuff added to that, you know what I mean?
No, so it's a very valid point. I think anybody would agree. We had the staff and that. There is a waiver here where you're under the age of 18. It doesn't actually specifically state how young. You're gonna go out and let's say probably 15 to 16 just because that's what going to see a while. There is a section where a parent can sign. You have to just as a guardian say yes, I'm not young enough to violence.
So how accessible is this information? Like, should we put it somewhere like the rules here? Where, it's like,
So I think when you were talking about ride-alongs in the context of training, they were talking about ride-alongs specific to.
Correct, ride-alongs are open.
But they're open, that's what that's what I was.
Anyone, any citizen do that.
Right, you can't do a ride-along.
but you don't know about it. You don't know about it.
And we can put that information on the board's website. No, we can put it on the board's website.
We can put that like that there, was that go around? Right?
I hung that
That was that go around, that wasn't that go around. So like places where the public actually is going, all around the corner. But a lot of people go to this meeting, come up here to the library.
So Sean, if you're listening, we got some community hour.
So I got your question. The 2 minutes is up. We're gonna move to the next public commenter, if you don't mind, Vice Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, that was part of, got into my, because I'm the one who found this at the bowl. If I didn't go bowling, he wouldn't have known about it. I had to text about 10 people to let them know that this is going on. And then I walked through the library. It wasn't in none of the agenda boards. It was in a kiosk that was on the floor where you go get extra. But if you didn't see it, you wouldn't know to go get extra. And it wasn't no extra. It was just this one.
That's because people have been taking them. There was plenty.
No, this is what I'm saying. If you look at those chairs are stacked up. That means they didn't expect a lot of people. And if you want to have it in a scriptorium, you thinking we ain't coming. That's smaller than that. Or yeah, it's smaller than this. So if you want it to be a real public place, then get it to the real public people. They're classified as the underserved community. The county knows we're underserved and still won't serve us. We are also known as the stressed community. These are the labels the county's given us. So to have something that would ease our mind, but then don't put it in a place where we can come to do it or to see it, then we're starting off with a problem already.
So the question is for us, how do we better service to get you into? Right now, we rely on public forums, social media, again, people posting flyers like at the bowl around. But what is the best way to get you the information? Again, are there community leaders?
The community center. Community center.
So flexible.
They got a list. No.
Yeah,
you got a flexible. I'm just talking about Roseville community.
Gotcha. So I just want to know.
So they already have an email list of over 100 something people from all the community things we have, and they didn't even know about this. So all we're saying is whoever you have doing that outreach, make sure you contact Rose Hill. Rose Hill will contact everybody else, and you will have more chairs up there.
No, no, absolutely. So again, appreciate the feedback and we'll do better. We promise to do better at getting the information out to relevant parties. Again, if you're not from Rose Hill and there's another community that we need to reach out to, please see me after me, get me the information. I'll make sure again for our June meeting, that's going to be public forum. We'll get that information out to those.
Do we have Facebook capability that we can push this information out on Facebook? And
Well, we pushed it out, and like as a member of the board, I pushed it out from my own account. Right now, we don't have a Facebook presence at the Newcastle County. We use accountability boards. Again, that's an attorney's question. Again, what's that?
because it's a public forum and that is
Right,
a source of
absolutely.
communication. And then secondly, as a former state of Delaware employee with the Department of Health and Social Services, these state service centers are 15 state service centers throughout the state. There are 4 in Newcastle, et cetera, Sussex. These flyers could be emailed to the administrators for each of the state service centers. And I am happy, because I have a great relationship with the director, that I am happy to forward me any flyer, any announcement information, as I know that we all have visited the state service centers at some point to apply for benefits and services, supportive services. So that's another method of communication, and it can be there and available.
So we're going to have to come up with a more comprehensive distribution strategy across the board, not just community-based, social media-based, et cetera. The fact again that we will have a committee chair that will be responsible for the outreach and has a foot in the community will also assist again with identifying some more of these distribution channels. We promise you as a board that we will get better. Again, this is our second meeting. Right, this is our second formal meeting, our real first formal meeting, our second meeting after being said. So we ask that from a public standpoint, that you be patient with us because we are learning just like you guys are learning in this process. And we want to be your partner and making sure again that we make it because we live in it. We are part of it. We've been affected by this, and things that have happened in this. So we not just a set of people sitting here, on high looking down. Again, we are part of the community and want to make a difference. That's all we're to try to make a difference. And so if it came across that, again, that's not the case. And again, we promise, and I promise you personally, that we will get better at how we communicate and how we organize and this type of feedback is great. Right? So we'll take this, we'll internalize it. And again, we'll come back next month and we'll be, I promise you.
One thing I heard in the presentation about Catherine, talking about divorce of motor vehicle, but I haven't heard anything about use of force in other situations such as domestic violence.
Right. So we were
I think those
specifically
things need to
tasked.
be addressed more than moving vehicle. Right. We could say, okay, we're talking about that because of what happened a couple of weeks ago. But what about use of force when a cop goes into a domestic violence situation? What about when they go into other situations and a person gets irate? How do they handle those procedures? Use of force on a motor vehicle, that's nothing to talk about to us.
So again, that was brought to the board by a member asking us just to take a look at their existing policy and to compare it against other policies from around the country for potential modifications. But that was only one small portion that we were tasked with looking at. If in fact the community thinks we do need to look deeper into policies specific to domestic violence interaction, mental health interaction, then the public forum again will help, to your point, the question you just asked, will help drive that kind of research from our perspective, right? So the fact that you made a statement that we need to look at use of force beyond just moving vehicles is a stake in the ground for us as a committee to say, hey, we need to go deeper on this action, on this issue, and again, look at it across the board.
I was just going to suggest getting back to I think there's not about there are 4 or 5 key small businesses right here in this community. And if you live in this community, live here. So getting that information out of the workshops, getting that information over to businesses like that, there's small schools, apartments, there's other strip mall. Getting that information in those places. And keep it like,
So I need your information before you leave, so I can make sure you get the information. And you can be part of my distribution channel to get information out to those other businesses, all right? And again, until we come up with a formal distribution strategy, I'm gonna rely on the people in this room, again, to help us, to help our community. The lady in the white hat.
I have a question and suggestion.
Ma'am, I get you.
Question is the Captain, the community resource officer, is their responsibility in terms of communicating with like the civic association? And then how do you assign them to the community? Do they actually come out of the community or do they just live in Newcastle County? Because if you are assigned to, let's say, this Route 9 area, I feel like you have a better interest in the community as opposed to if you live in Middletown and you're assigned to, okay, you really have no interest.
So unfortunately, we only have now down at IOC with community service unit, having 6 officers. That's reality. So the officers don't necessarily live in the communities that they're assigned by districts. So this area here is 31 second. All throughout the Newcastle County. So those 6 officers cover all of Newcastle. They interact with community, neighborhood associations, as associations. So there are certain neighborhoods that are obviously involved in relationships, and they continue to foster those. There's some neighborhoods we may hear once a year, they say, hey, we get time stats for every neighborhood for last year. Not all of them make sure they have that. They invite them to the meeting, they come and they get presentations about safety things, how to protect your home, crime that's going on, which is. Unfortunately, yes, in an ideal world, I know it's very common, you have the city owned those officers required. Our officers don't have to live in that. Which are community services officers. They live all throughout the county, a lot of them. They're assigned by geographic areas.
Yeah, I have a suggestion. I feel like this, you had this form, it would have been nice for the community officer that's responsible for this area too, to inform us of these meetings too. To give us, like, whether it's just an email, give us feedback on what's going on in the community, rather than just wait for us to reach out. Because sometimes, you know, you reach out to them and you still don't hear from them. 3 and 4 times and it's been happening.
That's all right, so that was just piggybacking up, sorry. I'm the OMA president of Federation, you know, and anytime we get a complaint or anything, we reach out to the resource officer. We get no call back. We got to call the sergeant or whoever else to get in contact with him. And it's like, you know, your phone call has to go through the chain of command on who to get to the next person, or who to get to the next person. Then our resource officer, he's over cities probably because he's active duty too. So now we run into that problem. So who do we contact?
So better lines of communication, it sounds like it is necessary, again, across all aspects of what we do. I got one question here, and then, yeah. And then I come back.
Mine is just a point of clarity. What is the difference between public comment and a complaint?
So feedback would be, so feedback, again, could result in us changing public policy, right? So if you gave us feedback, let's say if someone gave us feedback, they didn't like the way that a police officer approached them and didn't tell them what the charge was, right? And we decided to write a policy that says, hey, all police officers, how you say it? Attorney, all police officers have been now that before arresting someone, they need to tell them what they're arresting for. Right? And so the complaint started out as, hey, he didn't tell me what my charges were. We get that feedback, and then you turn that into a recommendation to the police department that says, hey, you now need to announce why you're arrested.
So what I'm hearing is that there's no difference.
Well, they
No.
can't be,
It
because
depends upon what you're calling it. That's what I'm trying to be clear on.
it can, yeah, it's a gray area, right?
Can I-
It's a little, it is grayish to a point.
Right.
So a complaint against an officer would be for a violation of policy or violation. Here, it's serious, dedicated unit for that. A complaint against an officer for misconduct, stealing, lying, excessive force, all those kinds of things. By the way, the code is written, that's not a public consumption, this board, I think, that's something that has to be filed with the agency. That's the mechanism to investigate. If that investigation is completed and not to your satisfaction, you think there's some systemic issue there. For example, that's the example I like to use is a no-name small town department office for a guy under investigation, chief methods. Right? He's got 5 complaints, they're always unfounded, never does anything wrong. Part of the House Bill 205 and 206, police officer standards on training, the old COPT, which is now post, has a mechanism where something to that, where it's been investigated, it continues to be going on, right? There's something there that's not right. There's a mechanism to take it. That's a complaint. Right? People don't like getting arrested. It's unfortunate. So whether sometimes it's just attitude's the right way, but how the officer presents, how the person presents, right? The lack of knowledge on the laws by the people involved. So that's just like a complaint in the sense of, well, I'm not feedback. You know, or wish the county police would stop pulling people over for walking the roadway without a light, whatever the charge may be. I don't know. But again, right, that's something that you bring to the board and say, hey, this is something systemic or something vision-wide they want to look at. To go. It's a specific issue with an officer's actions. That's a complaint that has a process. Legal process that have to follow. Unfortunately, putting all that out in public is fine.
So what you're saying is that if it's specific to an officer, it's a complaint. If it's general observation, it's feedback.
So let me jump in here, if you don't mind, Vice Chairman. When we say feedback, it can be positive or negative, right? So we're not using, this board is not using the term complaint because by law, we cannot accept complaints. That's the simple matter. So if you want to submit like negative feedback where you have like a criticism of an officer or the overall department, you can do that through the feedback form.
So I think I understand.
Okay.
What you're saying, but I'm not sure that what you're saying is exactly what I heard from the officer here. So what I'm hearing, so then just be clear, if I have a specific complaint about an officer conduct or specific situation, that is a complaint and it's not appropriate here. If it is a general observation about something that is going on that I feel needs to be corrected or looked at, then that is considered
feedback.
Okay.
Eloquently put, absolutely.
And I'm sorry, just the
Oh, my man, I'm sorry.
public comment is specifically just for the meetings, the board meetings. That's what we call the session that are for members of the public to make a comment for 2 minutes each. That's all it is.
Okay, ma'am.
My name is Saul Robles. I live in the community I live in Norwood. I joined many committees within the community of Newcastle to address our concerns in our community. I became an advocate due to advice of our councilman or official. And sometimes to no avail, and that's just a personal opinion. I did the CPA last week. It's okay. I did participate because I wanted to know what happened behind the scenes. And also to be able to advocate and also bridge those gaps between my community at a cost. Let me tell you, if you're going to advocate for your community, if you're going to address the issues of your community, it costs. It is aggravating, it's frustrating, it's everything about, but you can't get tired. You gotta be consistent because sometimes if we get our hands smacked, we have to smack the hand back. So for me, personal, again, experience, I joined Public Allies as part of my community. I wanted to advocate. I did the CPA, I joined RD, just to say, hey, the community needs help. I joined the social services, community health work. I've done it all to get to a point where I need to be reciprocated in my community. I need reciprocation. I want to see those things that are being a nuisance or causing trauma or affecting the community in that way, to truly be transparent, right? So if I'm asked, can you do this, X, Y, and Z, I'm doing, can you give us information? Can you give us feedback? Can you give us, anything, description, whatever, I'm doing all that. But I feel sometimes like it's not reciprocated back. My community depends on me, the victim, more so than as I call them, the perpetrators, depend on me a lot. And sometimes it is exhausting, but I'm not going to give up. And that's the goal. Are we going to be consistent, not give up, and just keep pushing back, but also giving you the feedback as I'm doing that to say, this is what I'm doing for my community. And if we do that as a whole community, we're going to hear more and we're going to see more changes. But it takes the community. So I did invite guests. They had to leave, unfortunately, because our community can't get to these people. We do have a segment. So I don't want to keep you any longer, but again, we appreciate that we're getting this full informed for us. And how can it be reciprocated? Because it is exhausting.
Again, we all gotta have skin in the game, right? So I think people sitting here have been their skin in the game. And we'll ask you for equal commitment from the public. I got you in that, so I'm just making a statement first. Sir.
Just a quick observation. I'm sitting here, and a lot of good things being said. I'm assuming, and the reason why I'm assuming is because I can't hear them. We get microphones, a PA system or something in here.
Okay.
Because if it's going to grow, that means more people will be here. This is hard to hear.
Absolutely. Thanks for the feedback.
I'll just get 30 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Going off of, I work with Honey. My name is Robert Miller. I work inside the Office of Defense Services. One of the things we're doing is trying to meet often with a large community working group. So we will be talking about this board, but other boards around the state and other police reform issues. We meet once a month now, but we're starting to set up sort of smaller teams by county and other things to track a lot of this stuff and get our ideas together before we come in here together. So Robert, ROBERT, dot, my last name is Vanella, just like the player, where the I would be, VANELLA at Delaware.gov. Send me an email, we'll get you on that list. There's already about 40 or 50 people on that list. I see it go around here tonight. We also put a big summary out. I know a lot of people can't meet when we meet, 10:30 in the morning on a weekday, but that's flexible. We can start having actual multiple sessions as well if people are interested in having a call just on Zoom every month to kind of somebody said watch the watchers, we can get our stuff together, coming here and being very productive when we're in the room.
Okay. Thank you. No problem. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You're talking about 2000.
Go ahead.
We're talking about feedback and talking about claims. I always think concerned. But what happens is, I think when we come here, comes to these kinds of meetings, we come to listen, but we also come with concerns. So when you receive these concerns, to me, we are always asking for the need to, and I think that's a question for you for that. She's talking about once you receive the concerns, we always think now you have taken the commitment as to have a return on those concerns. So we have, say, a list of 20 concerns this evening. So those 20 concerns will be listed. You give us a time frame, so to speak, as to when those concerns can be
can't, they have to have another kind of, process or whatever, but there is return on this return. So somehow you come back and say, okay, we have feedback on 5 concerns that were voiced at the meeting, and these are, this is the feedback that we have. Now, the feedback has to go to another level for another person, another process. We say, well, that has to go to this person, and you have to give us those people if we need to contact or whatever. But there's always some kind of feedback on those. And the other thing, I'm kind of, but I think all of us in this room think about things that are happening with the police, the violence, but not so much that the community advisory committee, that we always think of oversight, and not just oversight that you would have with your internal process, but oversight that the community would be engaged in that process.
Yes, yes, how come?
Hi, I'm Misty Stevens. I'm a public defender in Wilmington. I just had a couple of points I wanted to make based upon what I heard at the meeting. They're like a little bit all over the place because we're kind of hitting different points I heard, and it's just my opinion I wanted to give. There was the presentation on the use of force regarding vehicles, and I guess as you're starting to review the policies, I think that one in particular is so crucial. And one of the parts that's so crucial about it is it involves whether you can kill another person. And there was a lot of wording in there that really gives a lot of discretion and can be interpreted in a certain way from a reasonable person perspective. And what's important about that policy is it's important. It's about killing someone. There's a lot of different ways that you can interpret something in order to kill that person. And the word was still should follow this policy, not shall. And I think as you review those types of important policies, I would just focus your attention on that. If something, God forbid, happens again to the Newcastle County Police and a member of our community, I would just ask for whatever discretion you all have to think about ways to meet in a flexible way. If something, God forbid, happens, what's the process in place to meet within a week under making sure FOIA is met? But having some sort of structure in place ahead of time that if something, God forbid, happens, you can meet on a turn of a dime complying with Delaware FOIA law. Respectfully, regarding some of the issues that were regarding the complaint, under the new Delaware law and under pre-existing Delaware law, sure, complaint is only investigated by the police. The police department has the power to investigate that complaint, but there's nothing in Delaware law that I know of that doesn't allow a person from the community to tell you guys that they have a complaint, and that complaint is now going to go to that internal affairs investigation. And what's so crucial about that is 2 things. The first thing is that you guys should know if complaints are being made to the internal affairs department of your local police department. And you should help and maybe aid and maybe assist that person through that process because it's really scary. And then the second important thing is at the end of this calendar year, the statistics on how many complaints are made against the Newcastle County Police are supposed to become public. And it's going to be the complaint and how many were substantiated and how many were not. And I think you guys have the power under the law and under your bylaws to look at what the hell is happening here if there's 100 complaints and 1 is substantiated and 99 aren't. And then finally, regarding the public output, I really think having some sort of, I hate to use the word meme, something that we can share on our public networks, on our Instagram, Facebook, like a meme that we can say, these are when these meetings are happening, a list, or they happen every Tuesday of this month, just so we can forward it out. And I'm happy to, I work in the courthouse and I'm happy to put up flyers. It can be also, in a way where I can print out flyers and just post them to our boards because I know that people really care about this issue. But all of that said, this is a really exciting board. This is the first police accountability board I know of in Delaware that has the members it has, that looks like they're really committed to doing this work, and they have a lot of ability to do a lot of stuff. And so I'm really glad that you have all stepped up to this really hard thing. And I'm supporting you and I'm rooting for you. And I wish you all the best as you do this work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Get your feedback into consideration. And thank you very much for that, because again, that will be key. Again, the crafting recommendations back to the police department. So I just want to acknowledge that we heard you. One, two. Again, that will be a critical part of our evaluation. We look at it and recommendations back to the police department. Sir.
Thank you, that in turn. Once you place the head what I was about to get on. Now, this board is supposed to be accountability. Right. Okay, now, according to the federal government, they made these accountability boards all across the country, correct?
No.
Yes, yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. They made these accountability boards all across the country to monitor what the police are doing in the community, and these accountability boards were supposed to hear the complaints of the community and the feedbacks, whatever you want to call them, and deal with those and the police accountability board and the police accountability boards, and go to the police departments and say, look, this needs to be correct. This needs to be done. This needs to be done. So if we're not able to give you all the feedback, if we're not able to give you all the complaints, then why are we here? Why are we here?
So to answer your question, and I think she's correct, we can hear your complaints. What we're saying is that we can't act on your complaint. So if you want to come here and make a complaint, we can hear it. It'll be on the record, again, by our minutes. And so it will be recorded. The thing is, we can't spawn an investigation to go, our own independent investigation to go, hey, officer, tell me what happened in this specific incident, right? We can't sit in front of us, put his hand on the Bible and say, hey, you're swear to tell us the truth. That's the limitation of the power that we have now. You can come, anyone in the public can come here and tell us what your complaint is to her point. I think we want to hear those complaints. I think we want to hear those complaints. Because to your point, because of the way that the complaints are handled, if we're not aware of them through this forum, then we won't be aware of them at all. You first.
Let's put on that point. If the complaint comes in, so I think I hear what you're saying. Will you be able, I know you can't investigate, but can you say to Internal Affairs, this complaint, we know it's here. We want to know the outcome. The outcome should not be, the outcome should not be private. So would they be able to report back? In other words, would you be our eyes and ears to say this complaint went through, the outcome was found, it didn't happen, or the outcome was found that he's being suspended? What is that? Can that be a deal where that's done?
Question.
Yes.
So in terms of the feedback form, like you said, that form has not been created yet. The board has not even started talking about the feedback form yet. So any comments that you have regarding the feedback form, if you can like make those recommendations so that way I can write them down and make sure that they have something to consider as they're creating the form.
That's a recommendation.
But okay, that I got it.
Recommendation that because that, if I'm getting correct, and I think I am, we don't need a law or authority to say, please tell us what's going on. So for that point, from there, I believe that just to say, just tell me if I'm wrong, officer, the investigation of the Internal Affairs, that is not confidential.
It depends.
Yeah, it's not as easy as yes or no. So if you are complained, made a complaint, obviously the investigators will follow you for right. At the end of the year, we will produce a document. They previously mentioned that we'll say how many complaints were put out, what their disposition. What the disposition is. As a citizen, you can't say that I know Brian made a complaint against Miss Pamela,
what's this? Okay, I got that. But if I had a complaint and I felt as though I'm not gonna use you, Officer A, of the Internal Affairs has ignored me, and I came to them and said, this is my complaint. They will be able to. Absolutely, they would reach out. That's what
So we'll be able to reach out to them to say, hey, complaint. I want to be very clear because it's part of what we need to discuss, part of our memorandum of understanding, exactly what information to provide you.
Yes.
Specific complaints that we receive here.
That's what I'm.
And what actions can cannot be
Well,
done.
I understand you can't do actions.
No, again, even reporting.
I think this, to make it, yeah, to make it clear, I think that if any member of the board, and this is my suggestion, that if any member of the board is approached and told of any issues or complaints from a citizen, a resident, about an interaction with Newcastle County Police Department, that number one, that you will, and we'll have discussions about this, about the whole process and how it goes about, be able to walk that person through that process of filing a complaint. And secondly, I would suggest that because we are here on this, that if we're having meetings, or if we can be notified, if you want to make sure that it's going through, I don't think there's issue with you saying that, listen, there's a Kaden called and said there's an issue, a person had a question about something like that, making us aware of it so that we can make sure on our end that it was followed up with, and that the complaint is receiving the attention that it deserves.
I understand what I'm saying is the reporting of the results back.
Yeah.
Of that is a restriction on us, right? And it's a restriction based on the outcome. So the outcomes are handled by the board.
Okay, my next, I heard the restriction, but if I was complaining, and I'm going through what I'm saying, I don't feel the outcome. If you could not intercede for me, give me the report back.
No, I mean, you, as a complaint, you get the report.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
But we can't come in here and talk about the outcomes of that unless you.
Right, I got that. No, that's what I'm talking
So we couldn't, as a public forum, use you as an example.
No. I'm talking as individuals, us, as individuals. I got what you're saying. No, I wouldn't want you.
Right.
If I was picking my nose and arresting me for being a boogie, I wouldn't want everybody. I wouldn't want everybody knowing either.
Man, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I got you.
What you're asking is a process. What will be the process that will be used? And you probably have not formulated that yet, but that is very, very important for the public to know. What will be the feedback loop? What's the process? Where will the public be informed? How, to what extent the public can be informed? And if we can ultimately get that in a nice little flow chart,
We'll put it in PowerPoint.
it would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Again, once the process is clearly defined, we work as a board to be extremely transparent on how it works and the interactions between us, the board itself, and the public, and then what the restrictions are at each point, right? So we'll be very clear to play that back to the public once that policy is defined. Yes, sir.
Yes, you're supposed to, key word to this board is accountability. So who are you holding accountable? Who are you holding accountable? Because the thing is, it seems to me that now, this is the colonel, even though, he was the colonel for a long time.
If you look at the,
it
says
director ball.
Yeah, but it says non-voting.
Right.
Right. So he's here at an advisory capacity. He's here to answer questions, etc. But when it comes time to vote on recommendations and policies,
that's my question: is who are you holding accountable?
The police department, and public service.
How you don't seem like you don't have no teeth. You don't have no. Y'all are ineffective. I don't see nowhere where you have the the ability to do anything, but to take a report and a complaint, and it just seemed like you're just appeasing to the community.
So,
Your job, real quick, your job appears that you're supposed to be the liaison between the wrongs that is being done, particularly the disparity of the way our relationship with the police and people of color and us. Because I don't care what you say. I don't care what the media say. That debacle that happened with that sister down in Chester should have been avoided. I don't care. There should have been a bunch of police on 3 different and shooting 1,000 bullets at that sister. Nobody, including the police, put themselves in harm's way. That should never have happened. And I said, if this happened right here outside this building, you know what I mean? I come to you that wrong has happened. You need to tell me there's no reporting sequence, there's no accountability, but you just by word, you're accountable.
I don't think that's correct.
so
That's what it appears to me right now. Y'all have to do something to get some teeth behind y'all. Y'all are ineffective as a board.
Sir, I hear you. I hear you. However, we are acting under the law. And so the General Assembly passed the law last summer that enabled the creation of this board and mandated that all other law enforcement agencies within the state created a police accountability board. Now, in that law, it's not written into the law where we have the power to do what you want us to do. So unfortunately, we're doing the most that we can. Now, if you want to change that, I recommend reaching out to your state legislator to talk about House Bill 205 and 206 and, see if there's anything that they could do to create an accountability board that is aligned with your vision.
Yeah, because across the country, they are.
Yes.
Across the country, there are police accountability boards, all with varying powers and ability to affect their community. Usually with an upstart organization like ourselves, we're limited. We're going to initially be limited. But again, that doesn't preclude us from going back at some point and asking for more power if in fact the community deems that power necessary for us to do our job. And so where we are today as an organization is not necessarily where we're going to be in 2 to 5. Right? And with the help of feedback like yours from the community itself and yours as an attorney, as a defense attorney in the system and people who are advocates for individuals in our community, then we can help to craft, we can as a board help to craft this thing to work better for you. Right? Again, this is just a second meeting. We were established last year by order. We had our first meeting in April where I was elected vice chairman. We had a chair. We had a brief meeting to talk about things, and we're just starting to put the foundation together again to build an accountability board that's reflective of the community that we live in. We're going to ask for your patience in that process because again, it's going to take some time to build a road that we need to drive, right? So that's what we're trying to do now is take the feedback that you give us. One, you've heard one big thing. We need to communicate better with our community, right? Which is you need to get the fact that we're having out to more people more often. That's an immediate action item that we as a board will take away from tonight to figure out again how we can get more people engaged, get the information out sooner to more people. And then two, again, and looking at what she was talking about specific to moving car policy, that's something that's an action item. Again, that we could take a look at immediately. That's why the committee was created. And again, we'll take your feedback and others into account when we come back to a report.
Let me just add something real quick. I understand your passion. I know where you come from. But I think that it's not accurate to say that this board doesn't have any bite. I know where you get it from in terms of them having the power to do investigations, the level of discipline, things of that nature. But I firmly believe that we are all coming here in this setting to work on the relationship between Newcastle County, and its community. And anything that is said or recommended that we believe or we feel has the ability to improve those relationships so that we can come together as one and not be opposed to one another. That's what we're here for. Captain Faulkner is one of our command staff officers. And in my opinion, I think that he is very progressive in his thinking. And I know that his heart lies in community policing because I've worked with him for a number of years. I'm confident that any ideas or suggestions that come forward, we will make every effort, and trust me, we will make every effort to make changes to our policies, to our procedures. If there's something that comes along, our policies are online right now because of a conversation that I had with Chief James, Toby Owens in my office one day after work, where they said to me, and this was before the heinous murder of Mr. Poole, and they said that we want transparency. We want to know, we want to see policy. You know, we want to see the policies. And that's how I was born out of that conversation. So what I'm saying is we are open to suggestions that the public has, that our community members have. Anything that comes from this board and they come to us, we're going to look at it. It's not going to be enough. We're going to sit there and we're going to try to figure out how we can make it happen. Anything that we can do. Because at the end of the day, we're all concerned about the same thing. That's having a better quality of life in every geographical location of Newcastle. And the only way that we're going to do that is by working together. And for the police department, for us to say, you know what, we're not going to be closed-minded. We're not going to sit here and just look at stats and say, well, the crime is down in this area, so that means that everything is fine. No, it doesn't. It means if you really want to truly find out what's going on in that community, you have to go out there, you have to knock on doors, you have to talk to people, you have to attend meetings. And so those are the things we have to do, and we know that. So any suggestions, ideas, or anything that comes from this to this board, I don't care if it's in this setting or they get stopped on the street or someone said, if they bring that to us, then our responsibility is to look at it and figure out a way to say, okay, let's look at this. A lot of great things. This man right here got on me a few years ago when we had the casting with cops down in Glasgow Park. I don't know if you remember this. We were in a meeting over in Rose Hill Community Center, and you were mad with me because we had the casting with cops. And there was an article or something in the paper, and you asked me, how come there's no kids on Route 9 that went down there? How many kids did you take care of? And you said, how come you can't have a kid? And I told you, I said, well, we have the big crime in the state. You said, that's no excuse. You need to find a way to get them kids there. The very next year, we had the PAL vans loaded down with kids from the Route 9 corridor, taking them down there to Rose Hill. That's how things happen, by being in communication and the police department being open to making changes.
I just have a question that I would like to that. I think there's been a lot of talk about language, and I also think that hearing the mission and vision of the Newcastle County Police, steeped with that community partnership. But when you look at the county police code and Title IX, I'm wondering what are ways that we can kind of align that message of community policing, because it does seem that there's a lot of emphasis on law enforcement as opposed to the police profession, which does encompass that community village. So how can we kind of balance that and change the language so that it does match up with the mission that does sound important?
I just want to find out if anybody on the board, do any of you live in underserved? I was trying to find out if anybody on the board lived in a underserved community. Because if you just hear us who's underserved and you don't live in it,
Sorry.
it's hard for you to.
Cut you off. Sean said yes, he's on Microsoft Teams. Sean said he lives
Yes,
in
and
an
I just want to
underserved community.
first emphasize that I haven't had my hand raised a while. I got missed, but Director Bond kind of touched on it. But with everything, a lot of dialogue here is about concerns of complaints and feedback or not being heard and all that. But I want to emphasize, keep everybody aware that the great thing about this board right here is that policy aside, the chairperson, community members, but the actual, as you heard from the captain and the director are part of the board. So I want everybody to realize that you're not everything at the minimum. Everything you're saying is being heard right now as we speak. Speaking of your complaints and your your complaints and your feedback and such. But as far as lived in underserved community, I've been lived in underserved community my whole life in Wilmington and currently still is. And that's why I wanted to be on this board, and that's why I've chosen to be on this board as a voice for the community. To answer your question, sir.
So I say that to say this, that stop saying the word complaint. It's frustration. It's not a complaint because it's coming from underserved. It's not a complaint. It's frustration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we're trying to wipe the word complaint out of our lexicon.
Yeah.
Because again, it's nothing that we can do about it anyway. And we appreciate the feedback. Thanks a lot, Sean, for your input. So yeah, any additional public comment at this
Only one question. There's a new documentary that was released on Netflix called Power. Did any of y'all see it? Anybody else?
So,
It was, did you see it?
I know someone was sent to me, I'm gonna watch it hopefully tonight, but they said that the person that sent it to me told me it should be mandatory requirement for the police academy to watch it, but I don't know what it's about.
But we'll add it to, I'll add it to my lexicon. I'll be watching.
It's a very important documentary to keep our foundation on relationship of the police to the underserved.
Thank you.
In the nation.
Thank you.
To answer your question, I'm a former George Gray. Back in the day, if anyone remembers George Gray's school on Locust Street.
Yes.
So I can say I've lived in a underserved neighborhood, but it's not where you're from, it's where you're going. And I fought and worked hard to get where I'm at, but the complexity of our concerns, all the same. Promise. Complexities of, for lack of a word, if you feel that there is not a response in a timely manner. It's not based on always strategies, because I can say in comparison to living off of Locust Street, which is where I'm from, I'm originally again from Eastlake, to living in Bear, Delaware, the same response time was just that. And it didn't have any bearing on my address. So I can tell you truthfully, coming from Locust Street to living in Newark, to living in Claymont, to living in Bear. It is across the board. It does not matter per se your address. But it is the responsibility of the person who has the concern as reference of how you're going to handle the concern. Are you going to fight amongst ourselves, or are we going to definitively work together, clear our minds from the emotions, and we're going to focus on the policy so that we can make our places better, no matter where you're at. That's all.
Not that it's relevant, but I grew up in Newark, New Jersey. I was part neighborhood, East Orange, over there, one of the most popular areas in the country. So I understand. And, you know, working with police interaction, et cetera, from a north. In fact, that's not where I am now. But that does not mean I can't
Hello, Brooke.
Right.
So, Brooklyn. Brooklyn. So, and I understand like the frustration of the people. So this board right here, it's not like to attack the police. This is for us to try and get a better understand what they're dealing with, as well as what we're dealing with, in order that we can come to some kind of thought and help the community better understand what this whole thing is about. It's our second meeting. It's literally. So this is new for all of us. This whole process is new. We sound like we understand this thing, but we don't really understand it. And we don't. I don't. Let me just speak. I don't understand it, but I'm already bought in because I'm part of the community. I'm part of that. That's what Sarah keep saying. You know what I mean? I might not talk that way all the time, but this is what it's about, man. It's about we have to do this together. Or it's not going to work. If everybody comes in here and y'all want to voice your opinion, but yet we're not giving you the answer that you want right now, it's not going to make it any easier for what we're trying to get. You know what I mean? So I think it's very important that give us a minute. Give us a minute. We're gonna get together. We're gonna better understand how this whole process works, and we'll be able to give you or the community exactly what they need. This board is new. I understand we don't have a lot of time, but we're gonna figure it out.
One final statement, again, if there's no more public comment, is we're supposed to have a public forum next month, probably the same location, et cetera. Is there anything from the public perspective that you'd like us to cover?
Canaan Baptist Church.
Huh?
Canaan Baptist.
I can't hear you.
Canaan Baptist Church.
You think that's where we should have it?
That's what we should have the event itself.
So,
Okay. Yeah, I know Grove pull up very well. So yeah, absolutely open to the suggestion. The question is there a specific topic that you want us to cover again, so that we're a month away? If there's a specific topic that you'd like for us to cover, we can work with the appropriate resources to get them lined up now, so that again, we can put on a presentation for the public forum that meets the needs of the community. So we don't want to, go out and start having forums and having presentations on things again that are not relevant to you. And so we need you to tell us again, what would you like? Is it citizens' rights? Is it
we can cut out teach. We definitely have to teach the community. There is
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. We really need to teach the community when areas not this. What happens a lot of times, people are stopped, and then what happens is because they're not understanding,
right,
it becomes something else, right, and now they get in front of the judge,
right,
for something that could have been prevented if they just understood
what their basic rights are during their stop. And so with role play, again, just trying to get some ideas of again how we can present this in a way that again is absorbed by the public again, versus having someone with a PowerPoint presentation sitting here going, this is the policy, this is step one, this is step two. Again, that's going to go over a lot of. So we want to have something that's interactive and engaging, but again, also gets the message across that again from an educational standpoint.
If you do something like a know your rights training, especially regarding Terry stop,
right,
which is where an officer can stop you with reasonable suspicion and talk to you and possibly search you if they think you have a weapon.
Right.
I would really ask the panel to think about having a public defender there.
Right.
I have done know your
She's
rights with
volunteering.
an officer, and I think that a public defender should either be also doing as part of our office.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Misty.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Absolutely. So good opportunity to partner. We're always looking to again, any resource that we can bring to bear to make the community more aware of what their rights are. And because again, to his point, a lot of points that were made tonight, a lot of situations evolve because people just don't understand what their core rights are. Right, what their core rights are when dealing with police officers, et cetera. I think the more that we can educate the public on what those rights are, the more we put ourselves in a better position to help them navigate through the process. So,
no tolerance, meaning no warning when we stop for the community living.
gotcha. So, okay.
I mean, not.
I was gonna say, what's that?
So,
I've heard you bring it up. Well, I'll tell you that right now.
So the brother, I know.
I'll tell you that right now. What it was. I got stopped by a police officer that said I ran the stop sign, which I didn't. And then he threw other stuff on it. And I said, hold on, you're giving me a ticket for a muffler. And he said, yeah, because you're in a no tolerance zone. And I said, what the heck that mean? Meaning we don't give warnings for anything. We just give tickets.
Do you know which agency this was?
Yeah, no, that's not the first time I heard bring it up. Yeah. 31 seconds control option.
I've never
Wow.
mandated that.
He said no tolerance. You've heard of, in law enforcement, the term zero tolerance. Right. You know, when they.
Zero tolerance. You want to say that, and I'll say no tolerance.
Departments, and that was an old train of thought for a long time with a lot of agencies that they had that zero tolerance. You know, you had a neighborhood that was, high in terms of calls for service or violent crimes, and what you do is send in a bunch of officers into a community, and it was, zero tolerance. And the sad part about that was that you often encounter people and gave tickets and so forth to people who weren't the problem. They were people who were actually, doing good. They lived in that community for a while. And so, we broke away from that model many, many years ago, but there's zero tolerance. Now, sometimes what can happen sometimes in law enforcement, we get a lot of complaints for communities will call in and say, hey, they're speeding in our neighborhood. We may send out the traffic services unit to go out there, and when everyone out there, because we've had numerous complaints and we've probably been to that community time and time again, a lot of times, yeah, we're going to issue citations to individuals for the speed. And you're not going to be giving warnings necessarily because it has been an ongoing issue. That doesn't have to be the first time around, but if we constantly going out there and you're still having those same issues and you're getting your phone, the phone in the ring room, they're not only just calling the police department now, they're calling the county executive, they're calling members of county council, and everyone is, putting the pressure on you that, hey, you have to do something. So, that's how you end up sometimes with that in terms of speeding populations, but not, we're not operating with that zero tolerance mindset when we're going out into communities to address, problems, concerns of the community.
Yeah, that's what 19. And it was first it happened to Miss Smithers.
Not Miss Smithers.
It happened to Miss Smithers. Then it happened
Miss Gordon, they get you too?
I know it's Smithers.
Good. I know what you say.
Yeah, I was trying to, I did 25 years in the Department of Correction, SCI Chester, our master jail. But we have a code of ethics. And I tried to find y'all code of ethics on the website, and I couldn't see it. I didn't see it. Do y'all have a code of ethics for your office? And how, and I would like to, for the next meeting, that you look over their code of ethics and see if it can cover the relationship in there with the community. Does it cover, ethics? And that's unethical. What they did about the muffin stuff and whispers. That's unethical. Yeah. I think so. I mean, that's just one example. That's the other thing that come up.
That's a larger issue. Yeah.
I'm saying he may get a complaint about that and come find out the code of ethics. And do you have fact finding? You had fact finding. Where you can bring an officer in and you ask me, and you go through what you do your procedure, make sure he, I know you with internal affairs does that, but I'm talking about before it goes to that. You know, just on the bottom level. That does not necessarily relieve the discipline, it could, or reprimand, or. Okay, okay.
Part of the whole, that's part of the discipline process.
So the code of ethics, I'll post it to the website for all officers, correct? For public. So if not, we'll make sure that we get this, we'll get them to a public forum on our website or somewhere else. And that'll be one of our stuff. Yes, sir.
I just got one thing to ask. As a community, I know you said that it was personal issue. What can we do as a community to get you the personnel we need to bring it back?
Yeah, hey, listen, everybody's got brothers, nieces, daughters, cousins. You got somebody that has a interest in trying to make, be a part of making the community better, we would love that.
So you don't have personnel.
Shortage, right? It's a shortage. No, it's a shortage. Right.
Currently sitting 350, down 40 to 50.
Right.
And so the police officers is an entire squad. Right now on the street, we're lucky we're putting 30.
Not too old, man.
No, I understand.
No, but the perception is again that officers are not on the streets because of budget restrictions. That's not the issue. The issue is they can't hire enough officers to get them on the street. Right? And so that's a whole different dynamic where, to this point, we need individuals from the community who have that interest in protecting their community, who want to become law enforcement, to join law enforcement. I mean, again,
are they retired?
No, as a part of our public forum, that's absolutely a topic again that we can have. If you want to have a little job fair, again, a little recruiting spiel, absolutely. Because again, I think there's a perception in the public that the shortage of police officers is due to some budgetary constraints, and it's not. It's strictly because they can't find qualified candidates. You want to
okay. We gotta wrap this up. You have, it's hers. Okay.
And I tell you that a lot of my students that I've seen over the last few years, they come in and they're like, hey, I want to be a cop, and then they learn about the system and they're like, yeah, no, I don't want that. Right. And I would say in the last couple of years, there's been a huge increase in that. A lot of people saying, hey, because of concerns, transparency, accountability, I don't want to be a part of that, either because they have moral concerns about it, or because they don't want their brothers and sisters to look poorly at them, you know, for joining the other side. And so part of the reason why I'm a part of this committee, and I resonate with the concerns about, like, do we have teeth? But part of why I feel it's important for me to be a part of this committee is because I see that lack of personnel that is in place. It's not about the money. I'm sorry, cops make more than I do. You also take different risks than I do. But a lot of people don't want to be cops anymore. Mm-hmm. And I don't blame them. And I'm hoping that by having better communication through this avenue, it's going to take some time, but maybe people will want to be law enforcement officers again because, hey, that community policing thing that we thought was in existence is coming back. Because I think that zero tolerance stuff really did some long-term harm, right, to the community relations, and then it came back around and by law enforcement. So I think this is necessary for making the fix. Or short term, I don't know. I'm trying, but I don't know. If you guys have
one last
recommendations, I think that would be good for the public forum.
One last.
This happened all over nationwide, law enforcement, military, all over the direction. It's happening. The stress that it goes with, but also my suggestion is drop the requirements as well. Because the age category that's more committed to working in law enforcement and military, usually the later 40s, early 50s. You're gonna catch more of that age category than you would the younger generation. That you say is healthier and stronger. But I would suggest to try the requirement, the age requirement, or and make it like the Delaware River Bear Club. There is an age requirement.
Good feedback, sir. Any additional public comment? Okay, now, if there's no further public comment and no further business to discuss, I adjourn this May 21st meeting of the Newcastle County Police Accountability Board at 8:19 p.m. Thank you very much.
Alright, guys. Thank you all so much for joining on Microsoft Teams. The meeting has been adjourned. Sean, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank you.
showing up so quickly. Alrighty, we'll talk soon. Have a great night. Bye-bye.